By Mike Lindell, published in 2019. Digital Hawk holds and owns no copyrights to the reading of this material. Chapter 15. It's a Small World. In late December 2002, I was sitting on my back deck wrapped up in a blanket. It was well after 2 a.m. and Karen and the kids were in bed. I'd just come home from Schmitty's where I'd received some news that might mean the end of the bar. Staring into the dark, I thumbed the wheel of a lighter, and the tiny flame lit up my face. As I sucked in white smoke, I tried to figure out how to fix things. Increasingly, the regulars, a couple of my employees, and even some of my family members were abandoning Schmitty's for Floyd's. In the spring came something that really hurt. A couple of members of the softball teams I sponsored also made the switch. Who had built up the softball leagues in Victoria? I asked myself indignantly. Me, that's who. I started them, ran them, umpired them, did everything the city required. I even took care of the fields and the lights at night. Now, some of the teams I'd built up were wearing the Floyd's logo on their jerseys and going to Floyd's for drinks after the games. I felt deeply betrayed. One day, feeling angry and sullen, I tacked up a sign on the front door of my bar. For all my friends, family, and bartenders who are on the Floyd's team, I would prefer if you didn't come in till the season is over. People started calling me right away. You're crazy. You're going to ruin your business. Take it down. But I wasn't persuaded. It stays up, I said to everyone who called, and it did for one whole day. A couple of my friends who played on the softball league called me the next day saying they hadn't realized how hard I took their defection to Floyd's. We got through the rest of the season, but things were different. Now on my deck, looking out into the night, I took another hit off the pipe and thought about the bad news I'd gotten. I was about to lose the only revenue stream that had been keeping Schmitty's afloat. Pull tabs sold at Schmitty's by the Chaska Lions Club. Pull tabs were like the scratch off lottery tickets, except instead of scratching one to reveal whether you had won, you pulled a little cardboard tab to reveal a row of three symbols like those on a slot machine. Three cherries, for example, if you had a winner. Customers could win up to $500. The odds of drawing a winning pull tab were pretty high, turning some customers into regular buyers. Some became compulsive buyers, leading to a nickname for the pull tabs, cardboard cocaine. The tabs usually cost $1 each, and some people would sit there and buy them all night. At Schmitty's peak, we sold more than $1 million a month in pull tabs, more than any other bar in Minnesota. Obviously, I didn't get to keep all that money. The Chaska Lions Club rented space in the bar, sold the pull tabs using someone they hired, and used the profits to fund their service work. For me, it provided a modest but steady source of income. But as the number of customers coming through my door dwindled, so did pull tab sales. By 2002, it was no longer profitable to the Lions, and they wanted to pull out. For me, that would be a disaster, probably the death blow. I needed the rent and fees they paid me. Hoping to hold on to the Lions, I suggested a way to make our arrangement more profitable for them. I could sell the pull tabs from behind the bar. If they didn't have to pay their employees, they would still be making money at Schmitty's, and I'd still get the Lions' rent. Karen, along with Rick, the Lions president, had to appear before the Victoria City Council to request approval of behind the bar sales. I'd just received their answer earlier that day, which is where the bad news comes in. The city council wasn't exactly happy with me. I'd spent the last year fighting for changes in the pull tab laws. There was also the inconvenient fact that I'd just spent almost 3 weeks in jail. Because of repeat DUIs, I'd lost my driver's license in 1990. Since then, I sometimes let other people drive me around, but mostly I'd been driving without a license. Finally, in May 2002, I got caught. A cop pulled me over for an unrelated minor infraction, and I was charged with a DAC, driving after cancellation, a serious offense. A judge sentenced me to home monitoring with the stipulation that I couldn't use any drugs or alcohol. Also, I would be tested for alcohol with a home breathalyzer. I had to blow into this thing every night at midnight. While on home monitoring, I used crack and coke since the breathalyzer didn't test for those. But I didn't drink. That is, until my friend Wayne Hilk came to town. I decided I could have a couple of afternoon beers with Wayne without triggering the breathalyzer later that night. But I cut it too close. I blew into the machine at the appointed time, and a little alarm sounded. I looked at the breathalyzer. The alarm signaled a demand that I blow into the machine again. The next morning, my phone rang. Mike, you failed your monitor. The home monitor officer said, I have to arrest you. I'm going to wait until your kids get to school, and then I'll be over. I was so high and paranoid that I couldn't even fathom what he was saying. When I finally did, my heart sank. All I wanted to do was crawl out of my skin. A judge ordered me to check in as a guest at the Hennepin County Adult Corrections Facility in Plymouth, a suburb of Minneapolis. I was to serve 19 days, again with work release. My sentence was to begin on November 12th. That morning, I checked myself into jail and was shocked at how nice it was. My cell was like a hotel room. I even had my own television. I can do this, I thought. On my first day of work release, I spent most of the day at home, which I wasn't supposed to do since the whole point of work release is the work part. Then I rode with Karen and Darren to check on Schmitty's. Dad, will you play a video game with me? Darren asked when we got inside. Pinball and video games were Darren's favorite things to do at the bar. I sure will, I said, eager to spend time with him. I just have one thing to take care of first. Let me run downstairs. I'll be right back. You already know what I had to take care of. I wanted to get high. Think about this. I had just landed in jail because of all my substance abuse. But the instant I was out, I found a way to get high. To a normal person, that doesn't even make sense. But the connection between addiction and the serious consequences I was enduring made zero impression on me. And when some guy in the bar that day offered to sell me a $60 concoction that would guarantee my urine was clean when I returned to jail, I jumped at the chance. Downstairs at Schmitty's, I told myself I was only going to take one hit of crack and then go back upstairs to play that video game with Darren. I prepped a pipe, flicked on my lighter, and inhaled the smoke deep into my lungs. I waited 10 minutes. I'll just take one more hit, I thought. Of course, that hit led to another, then a fourth, and a fifth. Before I knew it, I'd spent over 2 hours in the basement. When I finally climbed the stairs back up to the bar, it was time for me to head back to jail. And that fact produced a searing type of shame within me. The whole ride back, I sat in remorseful silence. I had chosen crack over my child again. I checked in at the front desk and officers led me back to my cell. There was no drug test. I felt confident I had beaten the system, but the system had actually beaten me. 3 hours later, officers pulled me from my cell to do that drug test after all. They weren't stupid. I'm sure work release prisoners used all kinds of urine cleansing potions, but they worked only for a limited amount of time. I'm not sure whether the potion I bought ever worked at all. In any case, when my urine came back positive for crack, I denounced the test. It was defective, I howled. Officers were having none of it. With frightening efficiency, they hustled me off to solitary confinement, where I spent what I thought were the longest 6 hours of my life. But it was about to get worse. An officer appeared to tell me that the judge had revoked my work release. I was being transferred from the hotel portion of the facility to exactly what you think of when you think of a prison. An officer made me all my belongings, put all my belongings in a plastic bin, then strip searched me. Yes, that kind of strip search. As I went to put on my new uniform, a set of jail coveralls, the guard happened to be looking the other way. I palmed the deck of cards from the bin and slipped them inside my underwear. As I carried my bedding down a first tier walkway past tiny barred cells, veteran inmates on the second tier greeted me with the catcalls and a shower of crumpled paper and garbage. Though I had been in jail before, I had never experienced anything like this. It was like a scene right out of a movie. Walking toward my cell, all I could think was, how did I let this happen? Step by step, I had made choices, and this was where those choices had led me. We arrived at a tiny cell that had only a sink, a toilet, and a hard bench to lie on. The bench had a thin mattress and a flat rubber pillow. It was an isolation cell, and for me, this was torture. I was to be alone for nearly 3 weeks. Just me and my failures, 23 hours a day. My first night was a complete nightmare. There were bars on the front of my cell, but I couldn't see the other inmates. I could hear them, though. All night, they yelled at each other or sang horrible rap songs about killing people and degrading women. It went on, and I didn't get a wink of sleep. At 5 a.m., exhausted and frustrated, I sat up in my bunk and pulled out my contraband deck of cards. From that moment on, I spent every waking hour with it. I had just finished my refresher course with Voss and rememorized all the matrices, so I practiced them hour after hour. During my time in that cell, I must have dealt myself several thousand hands of blackjack, quickly stashing the cards under my pillow when I heard the footsteps of the guards. After several days, the rap songs were driving me crazy. Maybe, I thought, I can inject a little humor and get them to sing something else. I jammed my face between the bars on my cell front and yelled to the two guys on either side, "Hey, our cells are so small. We should sing that Disney song." I started singing, and soon other prisoners joined in. It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. It's a small world. I don't know how the song goes. Quickly, more men joined, and then even more. Soon, the two-story concrete cell block rang with a couple of hundred deep male voices singing the silly Disney tune. We kept getting louder and louder until it became almost deafening. At first, it was funny. Unfortunately, though, I had suggested one of the most irritating songs in the English language, and the joke was on me because they wouldn't stop singing it. It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. It's a small, small world. Chorus echoed through the cell block over and over again all night long. When morning came, two guards appeared at my cell and hauled me off to see the jailhouse shrink. When I walked into his office, I saw my medication bottle on his desk. The psychiatrist pointed at the bottle. "What's this for?" "It's Busper, Bus Buspirone," I said. "My doctor's got me on it to keep me off cocaine." "Well, it's also an anti-anxiety medication," the doctor said. He paused and regarded me thoughtfully. Then he added, "We had a report you were leading the prisoners in a Walt Disney song." Translation: "I thought you might be a mental patient." "Yes, I did lead the song," I said. But now can you please make them stop?" I completed my sentence at Hennepin on November 30th, and it was no secret to city leaders in Victoria. And when Karen went with Rick the Lions Club president to make their case for behind the bar pull tab sales. I knew the city council could say no, but I really didn't think they would. After all, the bar was in Karen's name. I couldn't see the council denying both Karen and Rick. The bar was packed as I sat there anxiously waiting for Rick to give me the news. He walked in with a sullen look on his face and didn't waste words. Mike, they denied it, he said. But that wasn't all. Rick repeated what the mayor of Victoria had told him at the city council meeting. If somebody else ran the place, we'd let Schmitty's have the pull tabs behind the bar. But not Mike Lindell. When Rick told me that, the tears welled in my eyes. In that moment I knew it was over, the end of an era. I was going to have to sell, and fast, before the pull tabs were gone and the value of the bar dropped. My mind raced. Can the Lions stay at least until I can get the bar sold? I asked Rick. He put his hand on my shoulder. I can't, Mike. The labor is killing me. I'm going to have to leave by the end of the month unless you can think of something. Later, I got Rick on the phone. What if I worked the pull tab booth every single shift? You wouldn't have to pay me, so you wouldn't have any labor costs. Rick thought about it for a minute, then said, that would really show them now, wouldn't it? So that's what we decided to do, a temporary solution until I could sell Schmitty's. That had only been a few hours ago. Now, on my back deck, I lit my pipe again, remembering how I'd felt after hanging up with Rick. I'd look out at everyone in the bar, putting a smile on my face as cover. Inside, though, I felt excruciating sadness. Schmitty's was a family, and now it was over. All 13 years flashed before my eyes. Schmitty's was the place where it snowed in summer, the home of Super Soaker water fights, where bikers sang along to David Cassidy, and everyone put up with the PD worshipping Alex Trebek. It was where you might find people kicking down the ceiling one day and hurling beer bottles at the Blues Brothers next. There was Vikings mania, firecrackers in the ashtrays, and if you couldn't afford your drinks, everyone knew you could always write Mike a bad check. I realized I was standing in the same place I had been the first time I went to Schmitty's. We run this town, a Victoria leader had said back then. If we don't like you, we're going to run you out. It seemed like a challenge at the time. Now, it seemed like a prophecy. To be continued, chapter 16, at a later time. What Are the Odds by Mike Lindell.